So I notice we are hitting 11:31, so I'm just going to get started and we can just have people join as they come in. Um, Welcome to our child-friendly lunch and learn. This is our first in September. I hope everyone's surviving back to school week. It's a busy time, but we will also record this and it'll be shared so people can have it afterwards to access. And today we are very grateful to have a true expert in the field with us to talk about self-regulation and sensory needs in the classroom, to offer you some experience and some solutions and skills to bring into your everyday practice in childcare. Like any of our child-friendly lunch and learns, we just want to thank Child-Friendly for making sure that we can continue to offer these from operators to operators every other week. And just to let people know that we do not represent, the government of Alberta or licensing officers or any kind of regulatory body. We're here just as operators to share our experience, to bring in experts in different parts of the field to provide some insight and supports for you. But if you have questions around licensing and government process regulations, please reach out to your licensing officer with that. Today's topic is from chaos to calm, so supporting self-regulation and sensory needs in childcare. The goal today is to provide you a little bit of insight of what self-regulation is, what sensory processing is, why it matters, give you some tools you can use in your centers, and have a lot of time for questions. So we will continue to answer questions throughout in the chat. And then at the end, if you want to ask anything live, you're more than welcome to. Today, we are joined by Jennifer Collette, who's a private pediatric occupational therapist, who's going to be putting on this presentation for you and bringing her expertise to all of us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jen to start our presentation. So thanks so much, Jen, for doing this and for your time on a busy day, a busy week.
No problem. Thank you so much, Crystal, for inviting me, and welcome everyone. I'm not sure of your backgrounds or how much knowledge you have with sensory processing, so we'll just kind of start from the beginning and show you a few videos, but I want it to be an open-ended presentation so that you can feel free to ask questions, put them in the chat, or even raise your hand, and Crystal can tell me that your hand's raised. So please feel free to ask questions whenever you feel like it. Okay, we'll start out for, did you want to talk about this slide, Crystal?
Yeah, sorry, Jen.
Why are we talking about this? No worries, yeah.
I mean, I think we all know this is a hot topic. These are words that we hear all the time and things that we're experiencing in our centers probably a lot more than we used to. It was a topic that has been asked from previous lunch and learns for us to cover and to really give some more skills. So I'm hoping we can do that. We feel that we're seeing more children enter child care, enter our centers with big emotions and behaviors. Oftentimes our educators feel very unprepared to deal with that. And if you're working and operating a center, you know that the resources to help you and to guide your educators are not always easily accessible or readily available. So it's really not always practical for us to have supports right away to support these children and these families. And we want to make sure you have a better understanding of why these behaviors happen so that you can help your staff and you can help the children in your center respond better. So I threw a stat on here because I thought this was a really important one and something I'm not really surprised to see, but the number always kind of puts it in perspective, that 1 in 3 childcare workers reported frequent burnout, 70% feel burnout sometimes, and nearly 50% of ECEs leave the field within 5 years. So we know as operators that having qualified, great educators are the backbone of our programs and of quality across the sector, and we need to make sure that we have resources like Jen in place to support them. So hopefully we can do that today, and that's why we're talking about this today. So.
Thank you, Crystal. So we'll start out just explaining what self-regulation is. And regulation, as you probably know, it's not just for kids. Adults need regulation too, and some adults struggle with regulation. And so this is just important to keep in mind. And regulation is our ability to manage and control our behavior, either positive or negative, and our response to various situations. So it's kind of how you calm yourself when you're upset, how you focus when you're distracted, and how you keep on trying even when you're frustrated. So as we think about this as adults, we have strategies that we use to calm ourselves down, and it's not automatic for kids. It has to be taught, and it starts right from when you're a baby and goes all the way up until you're an adult. Usually, kids can start to self-regulate when they're around 7, so that's really late if you think about it. For all the kids that you deal with in your centers. Um, and so we really, really have to start with that first thing to teach regulation is co-regulation. And so I'm just going to show you a quick little part of a video to explain what that co-regulation is, and then we'll go from there.
Do you
Oh,
want me to?
sorry, I'm changing the slides in my
That's
own
okay. I
slides,
can go
but
to the
not.
video and come back. Um,
Okay, yeah, so number 9,
number 9. Okay.
thanks.
You're welcome. There you go.
Okay. Can we hear that, or can you guys hear that?
I can hear it, but I probably can't. I've never shared a video on Canva before, so
Oh, okay. Okay, so this could be a learning experience for all of us. I
I'm
can't hear it. Okay,
okay.
Tamara, thank you, Tamara.
I'm gonna put it in the chat, the link to the video, because
Okay,
I can do that. And then people will have it.
okay, so maybe we'll skip the video
Okay.
and I'll just talk about co-regulation. She just does a really good job of explaining it. So maybe if we could move to the next slide, Crystal, that number
Absolutely.
10.
Okay.
This is just a really good visual when their storm, so the child meets our calm, co-regulation occurs. You guys might have seen this visual on social media. So basically, we have to be calm. So the adults have to be calm in order for the children to be calm. If we don't have ourselves regulated, then they can't match our energy and co-regulate. So that's the number one thing is we have to keep ourselves calm. And then if we go to the next slide, we can teach regulation to kids, but we have to do it when they're calm. So we have to do it not when they're upset, but when they're calm. So I love this visual of smelling a flower and blowing out a candle. So if you can teach your kids that, even your whole class, to inhale, smell a flower. So then you're going to do it with your nose, inhale nose, and then blow out a candle. So you're blowing out your air through your mouth. Sometimes I'll do however old the child is. If they're 4, we're blowing out 4 candles. So we're smelling 4 flowers, blowing out 4 candles. If you can teach them that, they're not always going to use it when they're upset, but you might be able to model it for them when they're upset. The other thing to keep in mind is to stop talking when they are upset. So when a child has kind of flipped their lid, they don't process verbal information. So us saying, need to calm down, stop crying, do this, do that. They're not processing anything. The best thing you can do is just keep your mouth shut and just stay calm and breathe. The other thing you can do after they've calmed down a bit is validate their feelings. You look like you're upset. You really wanted that toy. You really wanted to go outside. When you do that, kids are like, yeah, and they really respond when you validate their feelings. If you're not sure how they're feeling, you can say, your face is really red. I wonder if you're mad. You can use those I wonder feelings. But they just really, just like adults, they love it when you validate their feelings. You're not trying to change the situation. You're not trying to give in to what they wanted. All you're doing is validate their feelings. And if you can try that, you'll see how well they respond to that.
Did you want something? You need it?
Uh, was that somebody asking something or no? Okay, we'll keep going. So the next one, or are we here? Just a second here. Oh, then I was going to talk about sensory processing. Did anybody want to say anything or talk about co-regulation? If you've got a child who's violently hitting or kicking, providing them a safe space and still co-regulating but from a distance is also helpful. So all you're doing is keeping them safe in a space and then just backing up and doing those calm breaths and not saying any words until they calm down. And sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes it takes 20 minutes. But does anybody have anything they wanted to say or any examples for co-regulation? That's okay. Okay, we'll move on to sensory processing. So sensory processing is just how your brain organizes information coming from your senses. So how you process visually what's coming into your body auditorily. So what you're hearing, what you're feeling, um, what you're tasting, what you're smelling, all those senses. There's also two other senses that we don't really talk about. There's actually three senses, but one is where your head is in space. So some kids notice that, the vestibular, we call it. And so you can think about that if you're getting on a canoe, you kind of have to manage where your head is in space and how much pressure you should put with your feet into the boat so you don't fall, those sorts of things. The other one is what we call proprioception, and that's like if you closed your eyes and you moved your arms, we as adults would know where our arms were moving because we have a sense of where our body is in space and we can feel it moving. Often kids don't have a great sense of where their body is in space when their eyes are closed, when they're not using their vision. And so those will be the kids that you see that have to touch everything. So you're walking down a hallway to get to the bathroom and they have to touch everything on the way, or they have no sense of personal space. So they come really close to you. They push on things all the time. So they push on the chair. They're kind of moving things all around, and that is their way of trying to feel where their body is in space. So if you get those kids in circle and they're leaning on other kids, they can't stop touching other kids, they want to lean their back on the wall behind them, those are the kids that don't have enough information to where their body is in space. And so how we can help them with that is we can do movement activities, and that will help them feel where their body is in space. So they need lots of that outdoor play that you guys do so well, and the movement songs that you can do at circle time, the animal walks that you could do for transitions. So you could say, after circle, we're going to get snack from your backpacks. Let's walk like an animal to get that snack. So you use those animal walks to get that information to their body. Other kids get too much information to their bodies, so things can be too loud for them, too bright, or too much. And those are the kids that often struggle in a daycare setting because it is loud and there's lots going on, and there's often lots of stimulation visually too. So sometimes they can get overwhelmed, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the things that you can do to help those kids. So we talked about those kids that need the more input. Now, sometimes kids are sensitive in one area and need input in other areas. So often you'll find a child who's sensitive with noise or touch, let's say sensitive with noise, but are undersensitive for touch. And so they're seeking and crashing into things, but all of a sudden everything's too loud for them. And they might make noises to themselves because that is but they can't handle other people's noises. So you kind of see that imbalance in their sensory system. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, where are we? So then I had another video for you. So hopefully you'll be able to watch it when you have time. It kind of shows kids that have different sensory needs, and it's kind of neat because it shows them all in circle time, and you'll be like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what my kids do. They chew on their shirts, or they push on other kids, or they tap their feet, all those things. So there are those kids that need sensory input to their mouths. So same thing about not feeling where your body is in space. They feel like their mouth, like you just went to a dentist and you have to keep pushing it to feel where your mouth is. And so they need input to their mouth. Usually they choose inappropriate things to do to get that input by chewing on their clothes or chewing on toys, putting toys in their mouth. And so we need to give them something appropriate to chew on, a chewy necklace, sometimes ice, or sometimes something cold or a little bit of lemon in their water can help wake up those muscles in their mouth to give them that sensory input they need. Okay, and then we can just go to the slide 14. Please, thank you, Crystal. So oftentimes you'll see kids who are noise sensitive covering their ears. You might see a child yeah, Crystal's just saying if you want to ask about a specific question, you can put it in the chat box or wait till the end. You might see a child who's spinning, climbing, constantly moving. A child who avoids messy play. So every time you guys do finger painting, they are out, or any sort of sensory bin, they're out. So they're really sensitive to that touch. And then that child who's crashing into furniture is looking for that deep pressure or looking for where their body is in space. Okay, and then we can go to the next one. Just why this matters. When your sensory system gets too much or too little input, you can have those meltdowns. You can have the withdrawal or hiding. You can have that child who's just so restless and bouncing. They may have troubles focusing or joining in on activities. And then 5 to 16% of children experience significant sensory processing difficulties. And I think what Crystal said at the beginning there, how we seem to be getting more and more children in with the sensory processing difficulties is very, very accurate. And I see it too, for sure. So some of the strategies that we can use to help with these kids that do have sensory processing difficulties are calm corners, movement breaks, sensory play, some noise helpers, some tools, and visual. So I'll go into each of these in just a little bit more detail, but because I don't have any pictures, I'll just go down to visuals. Uh, to start with, visuals are amazing for all kids, and that's when you show them pictures of what the schedule is going to look like, and a lot of first thens work really well. So first, wash your hands, then snack. First snack, then outside time. And even just using those words or showing your kids fingers, first eating, then we're going outside. That really helps a lot of kids. They get overwhelmed. They don't have a good sense of time. And so they get overwhelmed with the schedule of every day. And you guys know that consistency and routine always helps them. And once they learn that consistency and routine, they do seem more settled. But some kids need a little bit more support to learn the routines, and to show them with pictures is really, really super helpful. The other thing with visuals is visual timers. So those are those timers that have the red, that you can see the red going down. Those are super helpful too, especially to transition kids that have trouble. So if you have a child who constantly cries as soon as you stop doing an activity and change to another one, they need a warning. Hey, Johnny, we have 5 more minutes of playing and then it's time for circle time. So going up and showing them, or showing them the visual timer, is super, super helpful for those kids that have meltdowns for transitions. Okay, and then we'll talk a little bit about a calm corner. So most of you are pretty good about this, I'd say, about making a little calm corner. Can you go to the next slide, Crystal, please? Thank you so much. I just love simple calm corners. I know sometimes everybody gets excited and likes to put a lot of visuals in there, but then they're more visually overstimulating. So something really simple, like a little blanket, a little mat, a couple of fidget toys, some books, maybe that breathing visual where we talked about breathing in a flower and blowing out a candle, just a small visual in there, but something that is very calm that you can use for your kids when they need a break. It's got to be available for all kids when they need it. And sometimes when you first start a calm corner, everybody wants to go in it all the time. So putting a visual timer in there is a good idea. So everybody can be in there for 2 minutes or whatever it is. And then using it proactively. So you don't want to use it as like a timeout or any sort of discipline. You want to be like, say you see somebody who's super jumpy and or getting overstimulated by the class. Wow, Susie, your body looks like it needs a break. Do you want to go to the calming corner for a couple of minutes and have a break? Just showing them that there is something that you can do when your body needs a break. It's very functional. We do it as adults. We go to our rooms. We take little timeouts where we go somewhere if we're overstimulated. So this is a great way thing that you can be inclusive in your classrooms and allow it for every child. The other thing that we can do if we have a child who is sensitive to noise is those noise reducing headphones. So they don't cancel out all the noise. You can still hear talking, so they'll still be able to hear the teacher, but it kind of blocks out the background noises of fans, of lots of kids around, maybe music in the background. So it just really muffles that background noise for kids that have sensitivities with noise. There's a chewy necklace for those kids that like to chew. You ask a parent to order those from Amazon. They have lots on Amazon. It doesn't mean you're diagnosing the child with autism or anything like that. It's just a child who likes to chew. We as adults, there's lots of adults. I'm one who likes to chew gum or have something in their mouth. So it's just a very normal thing to help them keep regulated and keep focused. Fidget tools like this squeeze ball. That squeeze ball gives you lots of deep pressure in your hands, and the poppet is more just to kind of keep your hands busy. Sometimes during circle time, we'll have a little basket of sensory tools. We always call them sensory tools instead of toys, so that the kids know that it's not to play with. If you give them a ball and they throw it, then it's not being used as a tool. So you kind of have that conversation with them before. I like to have them available to all kids. All kids will be interested at first in them, and then the kids that need them will be the ones that will keep taking them. The other kids will lose interest after a while. If you only do it for the kids that need them, then the other kids are always, why do they get a tool and I don't get a tool? I need a tool. And so I like to do it that way, just to offer the whole basket. Any child can take them. If they're getting distracting, um, then you need to have the conversation of that they have to be a tool, and if you're not listening when you're using them, then they have to go back in the basket, that kind of thing. Usually kids, even if they're not looking at you and they are fidgeting, they still are listening to you. So just to know that usually they are still listening to you. They just need something to do with their hands, and I'm like that too. I like to doodle, and that keeps me regulated when it helps me to listen. If I don't doodle, then I drift off. So we as adults have appropriate coping techniques for keeping ourselves regulated. Kids just need a little bit of support and a little bit of help with those. Okay, and I think we can move on to the next one. Sensory play is always great for those kids that just really need that input. So anything can be sensory, like the shaving cream I love, or even water when you're outside with mud and just make a mud bath, or the corn or sand, anything like that is a really great sensory play. And then you can move to the next one. Thanks, Crystal. Just thinking about visuals. So this classroom, although it's very neat and tidy, it's visually overstimulating. So just thinking about your environment at your center and just wondering if there's any ways that you can make it look less cluttered, because us as adults get overstimulated and so do kids. So just this slide compared to the next one. And I know this one's wood and you can't always control that, but just the feeling that you get when you look at this as compared to the other one, even though they're both still neat. Yeah, so just thinking of your kids who do get overstimulated by too many things. Consider this when you're setting up your environment. And then you can move to the next slide. Thanks, Crystal. The other thing is sound. So oftentimes centers do get noisy. And so just being aware of that, like if you're all of a sudden looking around and thinking, oh my goodness, this is very noisy, just think about how your kids are feeling, offering them the calm corner or the noise reducing headphones, just a little bit of time to debrief where there's not so much noise, taking a walk, maybe going to the bathroom, those sorts of things. And just being aware of how much noise is going on in the center. I know you guys can't always control it, but just keeping that in mind. And the next one is just the brightness. Sometimes like turning off the lights if you have sunlight in your center can just make a world of difference, especially if you have those fluorescent lights. They just give off that kind of glare that can be bothersome to adults and children. So just keeping that in mind, if there's any time that you can just rely on the natural sunlight and you can turn off the lights in the center, that is always helpful too, to keep your environment calm. And then this is something that I feel like sometimes centers forget. Dividing the kids into small fine motor centers and having them rotate can often just calm everybody down. So a center that I used to work at, I had a whole bunch of kids to work with. And so what I would do is just set up a center and then other kids would come too, which was fine. But even I get calendars from the dollar store and we sit down down at a table and we have scissors and we just cut out the calendars. It's the simplest thing ever, and the kids love it and they stay calm. The other thing that I just love are these water wow books. So what I do is I throw away those big pens. Oftentimes you can find them at the dollar store too. And I get Q-tips and we just break the Q-tips in half, put a little or maybe a few cups of water are on the table, and the kids just color with them. Coloring can be really regulating, that repetitiveness that you're doing with your arm going back and forth. And with the water, I find it's even more regulating for the kids. All kids can do it. They don't have to be a good colorer. They don't have to see in the lines. They love dipping the Q-tips in the water. You can divide up the pages and use it for many, many kids. So I love to do that too, just as a center, as something calming too and regulating. The other thing, I don't know if you guys have seen those pluses. They have the bigger ones and the smaller ones, but for some reason, kids absolutely love these, especially preschool kids and the older kids too, actually. They'll make them into all sorts of different things, but just kind of a open-ended, creative thing that the kids like. So even if you divided your group into 3 groups and you had one doing the plus, one doing the water, and one cutting, and then you switch them around, it's just a great way to keep kids regulated, maybe during quiet time in the afternoon when other kids are napping, that sort of thing. I think we sometimes forget how important, yes, Amazon sells them, important that quiet fine motor centers can be for regulating kids. Okay, and then so just to bring this all together, it seems like we went really fast, but I think it's because of the videos too, because I had a couple of videos to show you. But just bringing it all together. So always remember that behavior is communication. So the child's trying to communicate something to you. Ask yourself, is this child regulated? How can I help them to be regulated? Can I teach them regulation? Can I co-regulate with them? Those sorts of things. Environment matters, the lighting, the noise, the seating. Routines can calm, but sometimes overwhelm. So just to keep that in mind, how important your environment is. Small changes make big impacts. So those calm corners, keep it simple. Calm corners, movement breaks, we didn't talk about. We talked a little bit about the transition movement breaks. I love it when you can do movement breaks during your circle time. So any sort of song that has movement in it, like even head and shoulders, knees and toes, if you do that every day, just to get them standing up, they're bending down, their heads coming out of alignment. Anytime you start to see that restlessness in circle, it means you need to get up and do a movement song. I've seen preschool teachers do, oh, kids, sit down. Oh, I mean, stand up. Oh, no, 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 sit down. And then they're all laughing because they think the teacher's making mistakes, but really they're just sitting up and sitting down, or standing up, sorry, and sitting down. And she's creating movement, right, for them. And then it allows them to be a little bit more calm and a little bit more focused for when you're giving instruction for circle. Movement breaks, visuals. So we talked about the visuals, the first, then the visual timer, and that sensory play, how important that is. When you're giving your support staff, so say you're a director, you're giving your support staff those tools and not just the discipline strategies. The tools will be key for them to be successful. And then to partner with families. I never think it's a bad thing to talk to families about what you're seeing. I like to use this is what we're seeing that Megan is chewing on her shirt all the time. Do you guys see that at home? I always ask, do you see that at home? This is what we see at school. Maybe they say, no, we never see that at home. And you can say, oh, I wonder, if she is a bit dysregulated at school and she feels like she needs to chew on something. So just noticing that there might not be issues at home because the environment is different. And just using your observation skills. I've noticed that when this happens, this is what Megan does, or, something like that. It's always great to get parents on board. Um, then you can say if you do have an OT in your classroom or access to a speech pathologist OT or a behavior strategist, we have this great OT that works with our school. She can give us suggestions on how to help Megan. Would you be interested in that? That kind of thing. So that's a good way to talk to parents. So you're not saying there's something wrong with your child. You're saying, this is what I've noticed, and we'd like to help support her. How could we do that? Seek out supports and training early. So don't wait until behaviors feel unmanageable. Use your resources. That's so true. Use your resources to help support you proactively before you get to that burnout till it gets to that point. When we meet children's sensory and regulation needs, we create calmer classrooms, happier children, and less stressed staff. Did you want to add anything, Crystal? No.
No, I think you covered, it was amazing. Thank you for doing that. And I think that, the questions we usually get are from educators who are frustrated, often feeling like they've seen this behavior coming, they don't know how to deal with it, or what they have tried to do isn't working. I think our sector is seeing a really, I'm trying to think of a kind word for this, a lack of resources that are available that maybe we kind of relied on before. And like you said, we're seeing such an increase in these behaviors that people are really feeling unsupported. So I think any practical tips, and I know we talked last week or the week before our last lunch and learn, we talked about calming corners, how to set them up and different things. And like you said, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be like a Pinterest worthy corner in your center. It just has to be simple. And we talked about how to do it on a budget as well, because in childcare, there's not always endless funding for these kind of things. So I liked your ideas about just the Q-tips with the water book. I know the water books are a huge hit in my center, and we use them all the time. And we always have had a cutting table at our center too, just like you said, calendars. We bring in get parents to donate wrapping paper after Christmas and that kind of thing, and different textures of stuff to cut. So again, doesn't have to be elaborate. Something simple that can, be cheap and use things that you have already out. Is always good. We've been fortunate in Alberta. We've had an Inclusive Spaces grant that has been put forward. We're just kind of waiting for the second announcement of who got funding right now. But people have, hopefully, if they applied, seen some funding come through that. And I think just some of the things people don't think about when they're looking at how to adapt their centers and make them more inclusive is lighting. And you mentioned that today. I know I've spoken to a lot of centers about using some of that funding to replace those fluorescent lights with things that are more even dimmable, or just make more of a, calmer environment for everyone, even for the staff, because working under fluorescent lights is not ideal for anyone, I don't think. So yeah, there's, I think, so many different things we can do on kind of a dollar store budget that will have a big impact. And I don't know if I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions for Jen. Is there specific child situation in your center you want to ask for how to deal with, or some supports? This would be a great time.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, Crystal, but I have had some centers take scarves across those fluorescent lights, because I don't think they get hot. I'm not sure what licensing would say about that, but that often gives it a nice kind of dimmer environment.
It's fire code that I've run into. So if you do that, you got to check with your fire inspector, because you don't want to get in trouble. I do know that in some centers you can buy so if you have the fluorescent lights, you can actually buy like a sticker, and Amazon sells these, that goes over top. And I've seen these in dentist's office too, of those panels, and it'll create like a cloud, or there's different, kind of pictures you can put on there. But yeah, there's different options. I think, fire code won't let you hang anything from the ceiling.
Okay.
So
Fair.
it's different all over the place, and you see things that are not to code sometimes. But check with your fire code before you hang anything in your center, even on the walls. I will say too, like unless there's questions, I'll just ramble for a few minutes before we wrap up. But we do have a few other resources that are not something people are aware of. And one of them is something that Jen's been participating in kind of with me so far. We have a program and a collective of resources that is kind of just starting to open up for operators and educators and parents, anyone involved in working with children and families, called the Learning Resource Collective. And I'll share the link in the chat, and Wayne will also have it when we send out the resource package from here. But the intention is to bring together people, like Jen, with different specialties that all support us, and have it all in one place that you can access for webinars and workshops and resources on all different things that are related to early child care and parents and children in general. So we have a newly funded PD workshop all about inclusion that does align with the Inclusive Spaces grant program. So if you want any more information around that and how you can incorporate having, Jen's expertise in building up your center and making it more, of an inclusive space, just reach out to the group here and we'll send you more information. But yeah, I'm gonna just call out again for questions and see if anybody has any comments or questions or anything that they want to share before we kind of wrap up for the session. Wayne, is there anything that from Child Friendly that you want to mention today before we say?
Not too much on my end. Just thank you, Jen, so much for your time today, and Crystal. And for sure, we will be including their contact information as well as the recording of the Lunch and Learn when we send out our follow-up email. Thank you.
I did put the videos in the chat. We'll make sure that they're included when we send the resources to you as well. I also have, with resources from this Lunch and Learn, we have some movement cards for you that we created along the lines of what Jen was saying about, walking like animals and things. So we have that for you to take away from this, as well as some breathing techniques. So I think we did 4 or 5 of like favorites that we use in our center, like the candles and the flower. So you can have those available to use in your center too. So those will be emailed out from Wayne with the recording of this for you to have some resources to use. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. And thank you so much, Jen, for doing this today. And
no problem. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. If there's ever any topics you guys want, again, just reach out. We put this one together today based on feedback from you. So anything you need support on, let us know, and we will try to put together a Lunch and Learn to support you. So have a great week. Thank you, everyone.